All right. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, depending on what time zone you're in. Thank you for joining us today for our Spring 14 Developer Preview Release webinar. We have a lot of great stuff that we want to show you today. We have carefully combed through the 400-page document that is known as the release notes to chock-a-block full this 45 minutes full of a lot of great demos, a lot of great content. But if you want any further insight on the things that we're going over today, or maybe the things that we didn't have time to cover, please check out the release notes. For anyone who's attended a Salesforce webinar before or been to Dreamforce, you're probably familiar with this slide. Basically what this slide is saying is that we will be making some forward-looking statements in this pre-release developer preview, and please base any buying or purchasing decisions off of currently existing products. So who are the voices behind the computer today? My name's Samantha Reddy. I'm a developer evangelist at Salesforce. This is my 4th developer preview webinar, and hopefully not the last. And I am also going to shamelessly advertise a webinar next week, the Salesforce1 for Developers webinar that we're going to have a week from today. Encourage you to check that one out as well if you like what you see and want to learn more after hearing about Salesforce1 today. Joining me today is my manager, Dave Carroll. Dave, why don't you say hi?
Hello, and welcome to the Spring 14 webinar. It's a real pleasure to be able to talk to everyone about some of the new features coming out in our latest release. And I also want to endorse that webinar coming up next week for Salesforce1 for Developers. We'll be going into a lot of detail about how, as a developer, you can customize and create your own applications using Salesforce1. So we're going to focus on development on that. But anyway, today, it's all about the Spring 14 release. So, yeah, glad to be here.
Awesome. And because business is social and we're a social business, you can find us in all of these various social networks. So we do have experts on the line who will be answering questions if you want to ask them in the chat window. But we also have our @force.com Twitter handle as well as our #ForceWebinar that you can use to join the conversation and ask some questions online. It's also a great place to get information about events coming into your area and different blog posts that have been coming out, webinar recordings, things like that. And you can also find a lot of that great information coming out on all of our different communities, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, and of course, our YouTube channel is the place to find all of that digital content, including the recording of this webinar will be up there soon. So definitely check those out. And if you are looking for anything directly around Spring 14, developer.force.com/releases is your one-stop shop for everything related to Spring 14. We'll have a link to the recording of this webinar source from there, as well as the release notes themselves and cliff notes for the release notes if you want to see some of the highlights along with the documentation around that right from the page. And of course, you want to sign up for your own pre-release org yourself so you can get started playing with the features that we're going over today right after or maybe during this webinar. All right, so what exactly are we going to be going over today? Well, first off, I'm going to talk about the Salesforce1 mobile application, which was, if you haven't heard about it, recently released at Dreamforce and already iterating with some great new features. Then I'm going to send it over to Dave, and he's going to talk about what's new in the world of Visualforce. And then kick it back over to me, talk a little bit about the Analytics API and some of the great new features that have come out around that now that it's been GA since last release and coming out with huge stuff each release. And then back over to Dave, he's going to talk about Force.com Canvas and the great stuff you can do there around integration. A ton of new stuff becoming generally available with that. And then I'm going to close out the 45 minutes talking about other various platform updates around new objects and various API updates.
We're going to be able to get all that in 45 minutes, Sam?
Oh, man, I know. We're definitely going to be pushing the limit of 45 minutes. But as I mentioned before, even though we have a ton of great stuff that we're showing today, there's a ton more that we didn't have time to cover. There's a lot of stuff in the release notes.
That's for sure.
All right, so first off, I want to talk to you about the Salesforce1 mobile application and the new enhancements that we have around that in the Spring 14 release. If you aren't familiar with the Salesforce1 mobile application, it is something you can either download right now if you want to go to the Apple App Store or Google Play, or in your own organization, you can just change that URL to be /1/1.app and view all of your Salesforce data, your applications, custom schema, all of your business logic, accessible straight from a deployed mobile application. And then there are a lot of features that are available to you as a developer to be able to customize that to be your own set of requirements that you need out of a mobile application. Now, what exactly can you do right now within Salesforce1? Well, first off, we have the ability to create publisher actions. And so these are quick actions that you recognize that your end user is using the mobile app for most often. And so you can create declarative actions, like maybe creating a child record or updating a record, or more programmatic actions, like adding in Visualforce pages to either publisher actions or mobile navigation, and maybe a Canvas app as well. You can also customize the UI with mobile cards, similar to how you can embed a Visualforce page on a page layout, compact layout, so that little part at the top of the screen where you have those fields quickly pulled out for easy access and perusal. And then there's also the mobile navigation, so that little stage left nav for you to be able to navigate around your different objects and pages. And of course, many API libraries, including our specific JavaScript libraries for being able to navigate within the context of Salesforce1. Now, those were already available, and you can use those in a developer edition today, but what's new as of Spring 14? Well, first off, we've added some additions to the mobile navigation. So now you can toggle between your different communities within Salesforce1. And this is really great because it not only allows you to create applications for your own employees, but it also allows you to create mobile applications for communicating with external people related to your company as well, like customers or any sort of community group that you might have set up for your organization. And you also have the ability to add in Canvas applications, so now giving you even more flexibility to the different tabs and maybe back office systems that you never even dreamed would be in a mobile application are now easily slotted into your Salesforce1 mobile app. We also have a bunch of new additions around notifications where before, you could only do a couple things to trigger in-app or push notifications. Now there are a bunch of new techniques like tasks, posting to profiles, flagging items, having community notifications around either push notifications where, if someone's downloaded the application, it'll actually notify them outside of the app, or in-app where you have that little, bell in the upper right-hand corner notifying them, hey, something cool just happened. Now, around more of the UI aspect of things, you can now embed report charts on the record detail pages, so be able to view analytics straight from the record detail page from Salesforce1, and the ability to see new skills, which is a new object, or actually a set of like 10 objects, to be able to find experts and mavens within your company. So before, Chatter opened up the walls for you to be able to communicate with anyone that you might have questions with, now you'll actually be able to target those experts based off of user profile recognition. All right, and with that, I want to show you a quick demo of some of the awesome new stuff around Salesforce1. I'm going to head into my pre-release org, and first off, before I go into my Salesforce1 instance, I want to configure what I'm going to see within force.com. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a chart down into my record detail page so that my colleague can see these analytics straight from their mobile app. So that's as simple as going to the page layout editor, grabbing this report chart, and then dragging in this chart here. And if you're wondering where this chart's sourced from, it's just a standard report that was created from the Reports tab, and then I associated a chart with it from the report itself. And so now that it's on the record detail page, anyone that comes here will see this within the desktop application. But if I pull open my mobile phone, and then I'm going to refresh it, I'm actually logged in as someone else in the phone. I'm logged in as my colleague, Ryan Upton. But you can see I have my mobile navigation on the side with access to all of my CRM and custom objects. I can toggle between the different communities if I want to, but instead I'm just going to navigate straight to the account so that I can see that report straight from the account detail page. So there it is right there, easily accessible, and I can drill into it if I would want to. But I mean, what if he doesn't know that I had added that to the record detail page? Maybe he didn't know to check that just now. Well, I can really easily just go back into my org, and if I were to say, give Ryan a task, I could use these publisher actions, which publisher actions are available both from Chatter within the organization or using that little plus sign within the mobile app, and I could create a task for him, being like, check out these stats and add a receipt. And so it's associated with this account already. I'll give it a due date of tomorrow, and then I'm going to assign it to him. Now when I create this task for him, it not only documents when that task was created in the Chatter feed so everyone else can see and possibly collaborate on it, but if I go back into the mobile application, I could wait for that push notification to come through in almost real time, but I'm impatient, so I'm going to click refresh. I can now see that I have a little notification in the bubble in the upper right, and can see that there has been a task now assigned to Ryan. So I can see what that task is, see what the subject is. That's great. And I can easily navigate to that account to check out that report and upload that receipt. So that's as simple as here is, we're on the feed using the publisher actions, upload a file. This is something new with Salesforce1 as of this release too, that you can easily attach files and pictures and view them in a mobile format now. So if I upload this file, usually it would pull from the camera, but because I'm using a simulator, it's just pulling from my images. Here you go. And then when I share it, now it's really easy for not only just me to view, but anyone else on a mobile format or in a mobile device can see this format really simply. But the real power here is that this didn't take any code. This didn't even take much configuration. This is all just available to you for you to use and then to customize even further if you want to.
Well, that's great stuff, Sam. I think that, because it looks so buttoned down that I think sometimes people don't really appreciate, how much power is there. So I encourage everyone to go take a look at some of this and play with some of this. By the way, is any of this going to be available after the webinar for people to download and play with?
So for anything around Salesforce1, they can play with it right now. And we do have a lot of resources that we'll be showing at the end of the webinar around places that you can get started playing with Salesforce1 today.
Yeah, and by the way, some of the things that we're showing are in the upcoming release, but everything that we're showing is available if you sign up for your own pre-release developer edition.
Exactly. Yes. So definitely go to sign up for the Spring 14 developer preview or developer release pre-release. Wow, that was really hard for me to say preview release. All right. So now that I've talked a little bit about Salesforce1, Dave, I've been curious. What's new with Visualforce? I feel like it's cool stuff there around mobile.
Are you, Sam? Okay. Well, we do have some really interesting things to talk about around Visualforce enhancements. And I'm just going to jump right into, I think, one of the biggest things in this release, and that is the Visualforce Remote Objects. Now, this is something that is in pilot. It's in a developer preview version of pilot, which means that anybody who has a developer edition or signing up for a new developer edition can get this functionality right out of the box without asking to participate in the pilot, I guess. And so what Visualforce Remote Objects are a way to create your Visualforce pages and be able to do remoting without having a controller with annotated methods around remote access or remote functions. So for those who are familiar with this, what we want to do is maybe not do full page posts back to the site to be able to interact with the database on the back end. JavaScript remoting is a way to do this. Before this release, what you needed to do was create a controller extension that was annotated to support this remoting functionality. And then using JavaScript, you could very easily call those methods on the controller. With remote objects now, what you can do is define these objects within your Visualforce page and then access it just like in a similar way that you would the previous JavaScript remoting. But the key here is that you don't have to actually create a controller or controller extension to be able to do this. And so here's a little bit of the code, and I'm going to actually show you a couple of pages that I've been working on that take advantage of this. But the first step really in using Visualforce Remote Objects is to define the model. And we do this with 3 new Visualforce tags. One is called Remote Objects, which kind of wraps up your definition of all the remote objects that you might want to use in the page. And then we use the Remote Object Model, which defines which one of the objects or tables in the database that we want to use. And there's a nice attribute there called shorthand, which allows us to kind of rename that object when we're accessing it in JavaScript so that we don't have to continually type in __C or maybe even remove some namespaces if we have that in our org. And then you also have the option on the model definition tag to list out the fields that you want available in that object. And the difference really between doing that and what you see in the next tag, the remote object field, is that the fields listed in the remote object model don't have a shorthand, but if you use the object field, then the fields function the same, except now you're given an opportunity to create a shorthand for it. So it's really simple that way. Now, there's also some JavaScript libraries or some JavaScript support that comes with these objects. When the page is rendered, we see the object definitions, and of course we deliver JavaScript that allows you to do full CRUD operations on these objects. So you can create, delete, update, and of course retrieve the objects. And we have a sample of that shown in this slide down at the bottom, where we create an instance of the SObject model, myTest, that we defined up above. And once we've got that instance created, we can do things like call the retrieve method on it. And in this case, we're passing it a limit. There's some other kind of filtered query parameters that you can put inside of that method call. And like with most JavaScript, now we also have the ability to have a callback that allows you to then dispose of those records that you just retrieved. Dispose is probably not the right word, but work with those records. So with that, let me go ahead and do a brief demo. I'm going to jump over into our developer edition. And I think I'm going to use the dev console for this. So I've got basically 2 pages in the dev console. One of them is called the knockout shipment page. And this is the old school way of doing JavaScript remoting. You can see I've got a knockout shipment controller, and in there I am returning information about my merchandise object. Let's take a look at what this looks like. So it's a very simple page. Maybe I'll make this look more like a device. So you can see that we've got a few pieces of merchandise. We can drill into the details of that page. Now that's all done using JavaScript remoting. If we go back now to the console, so that's the old page. And what I want to show is where the remote call actually happens, making our call to merchandise remoted. And this calls the method on the controller to bring back the data. Now, the new version of this looks similar but slightly different. So I've got everything the same up at the top, but what I want to point out is that I'm not referencing any controller at this point. And so I'm using all the same styles and everything. And then I want to define my remote objects. And so I've got 2 objects that I want to define. One is this shipment object, and the other is the merchandise object. And then within here, I'm defining all the fields that I'm going to deal with on this page. Now, once I've got that defined, as I said, then I can go ahead and load the object. And I'm doing that with this retrieve. And you can see in this case, I'm using not only the limit functionality, but I've also indicated a simple where clause that uses the field active. So by the way, let's go back up and look at our merchandise. I've got a field on here that the name is this, but thankfully we've given the shorthand, right, so I can reference it as simply active. So down here we're using active to indicate, yeah, I only want the ones that are active. In other words, it equals true. And then finally, when the data returns, I go ahead and stick the data into my view model using Knockout.js, and away we go. So let's take a look at that one. Really doesn't look any different, as it shouldn't. Exactly the same kind of functionality. And one of the great reasons for doing this is, as opposed to like force TK or using an API or something on the client, is that costs API calls, right? And this is a way to be able to declaratively build those models right on the client and be able to access them without all the API calls.
And you don't write test coverage.
Yeah, by the way, you don't have to write test coverage for this, where otherwise you would on your controller. So there's more stuff about using these objects. I've created a gist that has a bunch of different examples in JavaScript of creating objects, updating objects, deleting objects, various ways of querying the objects, and so forth. So there's a lot more information there to get you started. There's a couple of other Visualforce enhancements that I want to talk about. One is that when you create a page reference now, you can use an anchor within the URL for that. Prior to this release, the anchor would get escaped, thereby defeating the purpose of the anchor. And with all the frameworks that we have nowadays that have their own custom routing and single-page applications and so on, anchors become very important. So now we support that. A couple of other quick hits that I wanted to mention. One is a live agent tag for being able to transfer files during a chat. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, it's in pilot. And then a generally available component is our analytics report chart. So the report chart is really nice. You can take a predefined report, maybe defined by an admin or a business user, and drop it right into a Visualforce page simply by referencing its ID.
Yeah, so similar to the report that we showed earlier that we just dragged onto a record detail page, now you could embed a Visualforce page with a report chart, but you could actually tailor what that chart is more than just a standard chart. You know, give it a custom filter, or maybe, hey, if it doesn't render properly, don't show my chart because that would be a waste.
Yeah, I mean, this chart is really nice to have in here because when you drop it in a page, depending on the page, you can specify different charts. You might specify different filtering capabilities as well based on the context of the particular user.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really nice kind of productivity tool there. Which is a nice transition now to the Analytics API. Sam, I guess we have some really additional stuff around our Analytics API, and I'm going to, spoiler alert a little bit, you can really see through what Sam's going to show us that we're pretty committed to making analytics better than it has ever been.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Dave. I think that the Analytics API is just the tip of the iceberg right now, as it just went, generally available in the last release. And you're going to see a lot of cool stuff continuously coming out with this in the upcoming releases. One of the first things that's really big as of this release is the ability to report on historical trending and create some rich graphics off of that. And so what that means is, similar to how with speed tracking, you can track individual speed changes in chatter. With historical trending, you can track field data over time. So if you have, say, like an opportunity amount, you can compare today versus yesterday or last week. This can be enabled for opportunities, cases, and up to 3 custom objects, and you can compare up to 5 different dates to be able to see how your data is changing over time. So this historical data for opportunities becomes available immediately as soon as you enable it, because we have that data on the back end already. Now with cases or custom objects, that data only becomes available once you've enabled historical trending for that object. So let me take you into my pre-release board and show you what that would look like for you as a developer. So first off, I'm going to show you how to enable historical trending so you can start reporting on this. So using the little quick find here, if I just type in historical, I can see it pops up right there in the setup tree. And these are all of my custom objects as well as cases and opportunities. I already have opportunities enabled, but if I wanted to enable cases, super easy, just check the box. Looks very, very similar to the UI for feed tracking. Now, once I have saved this, then to be able to use it, I can go to the Reports tab, and now there's a new report type that I'm able to use. So if I were to type in case, I can see that there's a new report type of cases with historical trending. Now, since I just enabled it, there won't be any interesting historical trends because nothing has happened in 5 seconds. But I have created a report already for opportunities with historical trending. And so this is nothing really that special here. It's just a standard report showing me a couple different historical fields. So, you know, the close dates between now and last month, as well as little snapshot dates of various field data. Now, the only real important thing that I need for this in order to build my own page around historical trending is my report ID. And so once I have the report ID, I can go into my developer console and put this onto a page. So what I'm going to show you is a page off of this data that shows a bar chart based off of the chart we just saw in this report. And really, it's a pretty simple page. I mean, at the top, I just gave it a standard controller, so I'll be able to embed this onto an account record detail page. Then I've included some JavaScript libraries, mainly just jQuery, so that I'm able to use a jQuery calendar for my date picker. And then I also included the resources I need to be able to use D3 and the Analytics API graphics libraries. Now, down here, simple script just to be able to take in those dates from the date picker. And then before I go through the JavaScript for building the chart or drawing the chart out itself, I'm just going to show you the markup down at the bottom of the page. It's only a few lines of code, really. I mean, I'm putting the date picker in using this input, and then I just have this one tag to be able to output the chart itself once it's actually been built. The markup itself is all defined by building out. And so within my draw chart function here, so I'm taking in today's date as well as what's been picked by the date picker, and then feeding it into this response object. So first, obviously, checking the authorization headers to make sure that I can even view this data. But then once I have, the OK, it can go through these various dates that I've selected from the date picker, and it feeds it into this field. This is the new field as of this release, the historical snapshot dates. So feeding up to those 5 dates to be able to compare the data over those various dates. Now, the only thing that's hard-coded in this entire JavaScript section is this report ID right here, which I'll paste in what I had just copied from that other page. The exact same report that we just saw. And then it's parsing through the chart data in the same way that you would parse through for any other representation you're trying to show for the Analytics API. It goes through the response object, and then it grabs both the columns and the rows, so the grouping downs and the grouping, to parse through that declarative report in order to create the axes for the X and Y report that you're trying to graphically build. So I'm going to go back into my account and add this exact report to this page. So if I edit the layout, I'm going to take that other report off, go to my Visualforce page itself, and drag in that Visualforce page straight onto the page. And actually, forgot to modify the size. We won't be able to see it. So take that little wrench, I'll make it 700 by 600, and then click Save. Now, if I were to scroll down to where this graph is, this is the same representation that I have back of what we had on the other report tab. Sorry, I closed that guy. I could start removing some of these different dates if I didn't want to show them, or select maybe more dates depending on what I'm trying to show over time. And so I can see, hey, look, I'm getting more opportunities closed over, the last couple days and seeing an increase in my trends. But this could be for anything rather than just, a dollar amount, whatever you would want to track, especially around big data.
Now, this API or capability is in pilot, right?
No, historical trending is generally available.
Generally available?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it's just something that you have to enable within your organization to be able to take advantage of.
Great.
Another great thing that's available with the Analytics API as of this release is the ability to access your Analytics API data with Apex. And so similarly to how we were able to grab that data in JavaScript by just feeding it a report ID, we now can feed this method in Apex a report ID in order to be able to parse through that data and metadata. And so this can become especially useful on more of the back-end side of things. So what I was showing you before was focused more on graphics and representations that you can show of that data in charts. But with Apex, think of it more as attaching business logic to those report results. Things like grabbing report data and making a post to Chatter. Or maybe you're trying to create snapshots of those reports and attach it to a record. Or even, something with the running reports like nightly. Dave, you look like you're making a face. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this is a really good way if you combine this with scheduled Apex or batch Apex to be able to run reports, have them up to date and available. A good use case for this is maybe you want that report data to be integrated with some other system within your company. You can use this Apex class to create a custom REST service that you could then call to facilitate that integration. I wish I was the smartest person in this room and I could give you all the different use cases, but I think this really makes data available in a way that SOQL can't for your integrations and for the applications you're building.
Definitely. It's like a meta representation of a SOQL query. Now, just to close out my little spiel on Apex, there's a few other additional Apex updates that I felt were worth noting. The first of which is there is an increased query timeout for batch start method. So before we only offered 3 minutes, and then you timed out. But now we've offered 3 times as much, or a little bit more than 3 times as much time for you to be able to run that initial query. And so if you can't be able to run that initial query within the 10 minutes, that probably means you need to go back and
yeah, it seems like 10 minutes is probably enough time for 99.99% of anything that you would want to do. So this is effectively, not exactly, but effectively removes the timeout for that. So get all your work done in 10 minutes.
Definitely. Secondly, around the opposite side of the spectrum, test coverage and testing, we have the ability to now remove test records that have been created with an auto number name. So before, when you would run a test class that would say create 5 test records, that transient data wasn't fully transient because when you delete those 5 test records at the end of your test class, you would see a gap in those naming conventions from the actual application. So now you have the ability to, make sure that all test data remains test data and it has no effect on your actual organization data.
So basically, if you have an auto number field, right, it increments every time a record's created.
Yep.
And when you would run test data, that incrementation would still happen even when the test data was removed, and so you could actually end up with gaps in your incremented auto numbers. So this really helps give you a clean slate once your tests are done running.
Exactly. Well, seems like we have a lot of cool stuff on the Analytics API, but Force.com Canvas is another thing that's been a big contender with major updates. Dave, why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Canvas. Hopefully most of you guys out there who are veterans of the platform have been using Canvas or at least checking out some of the APIs associated with it, because one of the things that I've noticed before I get into the updates is working with Canvas, we provide some interesting APIs in JavaScript that you actually don't have to be in Canvas to take advantage of, which is pretty cool. Things like some of the pub sub type of stuff, as well as some other things. So anyways, Canvas. For those who are new, Canvas is an integration technology that we provide that allows you to essentially create a secure iframe that allows you to surface another web app directly within the Salesforce UI. And as Sam mentioned earlier, you can surface that not only in an iframe in a web page, which is kind of how we traditionally think about it, but you can also surface it directly within Salesforce1. What that means is that you can now develop these apps, on Heroku, on whatever system that you want, and contextually bring that up into Salesforce1, thereby giving you even more flexibility and expression in building apps for Salesforce1. What I want to talk about specifically today is we're making generally available apps in the publisher and the feed. So the publisher, of course, Sam demonstrated that when she was attaching the task or creating the task for Ryan. Those actions that you can do in the chatter feed are called publisher actions, and so that area is called the publisher. And so now we can very easily create a Canvas app and expose it as a publisher action. So why would you want to do that? You're thinking to yourself. I know I was when I first read this. And I think a good use case is one, if you think about time cards. So maybe you have an app that's associated with your accounting and payroll system for collecting time cards. You can create that app, surface it in the chatter feed, and then people could fill out their time cards directly from the chatter feed, for instance. And so that's a feed-based Canvas app as opposed to a global publisher action. And the difference between these two is all about context. So a global publisher action is limited in context to the user who is doing the action, creating the action. When it's a feed, the feed is generally associated either with a user or a record or a group or something like that, which provides additional context to the Canvas app as an action. So that's our publisher and feed Canvas availability. One thing that I think is more fun, because I'm the kind of guy who likes to tinker with code. I like to see different things talking to each other, and events happen and reactions to those events. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the events between a Canvas app and a Visualforce page. So for a long time, it's been really hard. As I mentioned, this is an iframe on steroids. It's been really hard to communicate between an app running in an iframe and the app that's hosting the iframe. And what we're doing with these events is we're making that possible. And we do that with a publish sub kind of, a pub sub kind of approach, which means that whether you're on the Canvas app or the Visualforce page, you can publish a topic, and then the Canvas app or the Visualforce page that is interacting with that can subscribe to that topic. Now, once it's subscribed to a topic, every time one or the other publishes any data to that particular topic, surfaced as an event, the app that subscribed to it can access that data. And so now you have a really efficient channel of communicating, efficient and sanctioned, secure channel of communicating between both the Canvas app and the Visualforce page. So the kind of things that you can do in addition to these events is, of course, publish actions, but there's some other actions such as resize that's really nice, right? The efforts around web development, mobile web development of late have all been around having responsive design and writing it once and displaying it in multiple different formats. And so the resize really enables us to understand when the page is resized so that we can properly respond within our Canvas app. And then I mentioned the subscribe and unsubscribe. So another feature that we've included in this release is the ability to go into debug mode when you're using the Canvas SDK. And one of the hardest things to do when you've got kind of two separate systems that you're trying to bring together to work as a single seamless application is debugging these things. It's kind of like, brothers and sisters, like he did it, no, she did it, no, he did it, right? It's hard to figure out exactly where things are going wrong and what those things are. And so with the Canvas Enable method within the Canvas SDK, that allows events that happen within the Canvas app to surface up into the Salesforce debug log.
Right, and also when you plug this into, like, for example, the inspect element, if you type this straight into the console, you can then debug both the parent and the child window from the same console, being able to, see who's affecting what in brother-sister relationship. Yeah,
exactly. So nice addition to the Canvas functionality. So let's go ahead and demo a little bit of that pub sub stuff. And I've got a very simple demo. Let me see if I can remember where to go for it. Right, so we're back in our developer edition. And I noticed a few questions already that have come in on the chat. I know there's some people who are brand new to the Force.com platform. We have various different editions: Group Edition, Enterprise Edition, Professional Edition. That's what I was thinking of with the P. And the Developer Edition is what we recommend for all developers to both explore as well as develop new features that they want to implement, because it's fully featured and everything's available. Okay, so what we've done is we've created a pretty simple Canvas application. And this Canvas application basically gives us a list of parts that are available maybe in our warehouse or something like that. And I'm just going to flip over and show you the code for that. This is an application that is running on Heroku. And it's a Java application, and basically we've got a page here called Publisher JSP, Signed Request JSP. These are kind of standard things that you get with the initial template from the Canvas when you create a Canvas app. But what I want to point out is that we're using this shipment.js to bring in all the functionality that we want on the client side for the Canvas app. And really, this is kind of simulating some things, but also giving us the opportunity to interact with the Visualforce page. So basically, I've got a list of items that are selectable. And when I select it, what I'm going to do is go ahead and publish some data to this Canvas Publisher event infrastructure. And so it's just another thing that happens, when you select something. So, I'm not going to go into too much detail there. What I do want to do is go and show you then the actual Visualforce page on the other side of that. So when my document is ready on this page, what's happening is I'm subscribing to a publisher event, right? So you see it's my namespace, myEvent.1. Again, going back to the Canvas app, you can see that the event that we're publishing is my namespace, myEvent1. We're very creative with, our event naming, and so that's why we like to use dots and numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look at what that looks like. I can do that back in my contact record by clicking Create Part Request. And what I've done with my Canvas app is I've put a border around the iframe so that you can actually see where the Visualforce page starts and where the Canvas page starts within that as well. So everything within this border is from the Canvas app. And you'll notice that my submit button's outside of the Canvas app. This is actually on the Visualforce page. And what I want to do is, in this case, I want to create an order request, and I don't want anybody to be able to submit it until I select something. So I've gone ahead and selected spare battery, and the submit button is now enabled. So let me just run through that one more time because it happened pretty subtly. Let's reload this. Right, so my Canvas app loads and my submit button is disabled.
They might have saved it from before, even though it reloaded it.
Oh, did it? Okay. And then when I select one of the items in here, you can, if you watch the submit button, boom, it becomes enabled, and now I can go ahead and submit that. And then it navigates me to my part request. So very simple example, but it shows the power. I could send any information that I want on that pub sub request, right? And so that allows both systems to be able to communicate very easily.
So in that subscribe method that you had within, or was it the publish method that you had within your Canvas application, there's a parameter in there to be able to send that data over. Can you possibly target also one Canvas app? Like if you have Canvas apps on multiple Visualforce pages, how would you know who it's talking to?
Oh, absolutely. So the great thing about the publish subscribe way of doing things is I can publish events or different events and have different applications, pages, whatever, that are listening to those events.
Okay.
So one publisher can publish to multiple channels. Awesome. Is a way to think about that. I could have multiple apps listening for the same event, subscribe to the same event or different events. So very flexible. Right. So we're getting down near the Q&A time, and that's a really huge part of this webinar. But before we do, we've got a few other things that we'd like to highlight on the release. Sam, you want to take us home from here?
Yeah. So just a few API updates that I want to talk about before we head into the Q&A. First off, SOQL and SOSL with every release seems to have some new cool features, and this release is no different. First off, around SOQL queries, you can now query for compound address fields and geolocation fields without having to parse them out into their individual pieces. So no more of this latitude, longitude, or if you're on like an account lead or contact, for example, grabbing the billing address by street, city, state, what have you, all of those different elements in order to be able to either do a specific query, just grabbing that field, or doing a radial distance query based off of those address fields.
Yeah, this is actually really powerful because prior to this we had to do billing street, billing address, billing city, billing state, and all this kind of stuff. Now we can get the full address field directly from our select list just by referencing the compound field.
Exactly.
But the more important part is
the geolocation.
Geolocation.
Yes. That geolocation field is now something you can query for and include without having to parse out. Huge. Awesome. I love it. Now, around SOSL, we've also added in the ability to use an offset clause so that you can easily paginate through large result sets. So, pretty awesome. Also, I know we don't really call out new objects too often, but there were a couple that I think were really worth mentioning in this current release. First off being the limit allocation per app object, which allows you to allocate different API quotas for different applications within your organization. So, reserving API capacity for those critical applications that your company is using, or set limits on those non-critical applications so they can't eat up all of your API requests for a 24-hour period. And this applies to pretty much all the generic streaming events as well as, the different batch requests that you might be making. In addition, we've also created this own content document object. So now you can query for files that are owned by specific users. And the last object that we've added is I kind of mentioned it earlier, but it's about 10 specific objects around profile skills. So this is something that you can endorse for different users in your company, be able to query for users that have these skills, collaborate on these various skills, so you can find users with very specific knowledge within your company related to anything, any set of objects that you could associate skills with. Pretty cool stuff. And the last thing that I want to go over is our new place order REST API. And so this is going to allow you to integrate your Salesforce order data, which orders is pretty new to the standard object schema, and be able to integrate your Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and maybe any third-party system that you might have around orders, perhaps e-commerce, contracts, things like that. But streamline this integration to make it really simple for you to bring all these disparate systems together. So what I mean by this is, in Sales Cloud you have opportunities and quotes, which can turn into contracts and orders. But then there's also the ability to take those orders and turn them into assets and, service entitlements. And this really reminds me of the warehouse schema in the sense that, you have your order fulfillment system and bill, all this stuff working together for one set of order requests. But it's a kind of hairy system with several different objects involved, and, this new place order API really connects all of these together to make it really simple for you to create all of these different resources with one API call. And so what that looks like is we have here our, we're creating an order object in this JSON format we're really familiar with, giving it, the necessary IDs associated with what account, maybe what product within your organization, what price book, etc. And then using this one URI within the REST Explorer, we can see that we're creating that order really simply within Salesforce, and then it can be associated to all of our standard CRM and service. Really bridging the gap in our e-commerce area and being able to integrate with these third-party shopping applications and back-office systems. All right, so that was a quick 45 minutes.
That's a lot of stuff, huh?
It was a lot of stuff.
Boy, and we didn't. Just so everyone knows, we just picked some highlights, right? So there's a ton of stuff you really need to go and take a peek at the release notes. We're going to get right away to questions so you can see what we've covered. We have a lot of links for resources. We'll leave this on the screen for a minute. One resource that I wanted to mention, thank you to Daniel Hest for posting on Twitter the gist that I mentioned that shows all the functions and CRUD operations that you can do with remote objects. So to get to that, just, find my feed, my Twitter feed at dcarroll, at dcarroll, 2 R's, 2 L's, and you'll find Daniel Hest's post on that. So with that,
let's go to the questions.
We ready for Q&A, Sam?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. One thing that I would like everyone to know, for those of you who have not attended one of these webinars before, there's a ton of questions. Of course, this is interesting stuff, and we can only go so deep. All of the questions that you guys have sent in, we may not get to all of them today, but we promise, Scout's honor, that we will answer all these questions and then publish them on developer.force.com on the Spring 14 release resources page. Okay? So with that caveat in place, let's go through a couple of questions. The question is, do you have Windows, I think it meant Windows, phone support in Salesforce1 Mobile? You can use Salesforce1 in anything that has a browser, including Windows Phone. We do not have a native client for that or a native app for that at this point. There was also another question, same question, except this time BlackBerry. Same thing applies. So we don't have a native BlackBerry app for that yet, but the web app works on any device. So, Sam, you want to take this question here?
So what exactly is Salesforce1? A new name for the platform or the mobile app? So there are two. This is such a hairy question to answer because it is both a platform and a mobile application. So what we've been talking about today in this webinar has been in the context of the Salesforce1 mobile app, but the Salesforce1 platform encompasses all of the aspects of the platform that we have already been using and can continue to use to modify both the desktop and mobile application.
Yeah, Salesforce1 platform is Force.com, it's Heroku, it's ExactTarget, Fuel. I knew it started with an F. Those are the Salesforce1 platforms. So in a sense, there's a bit of renaming. But the confusing part is when we talk about the app, we call it Salesforce1 as well. So there's a Salesforce1 app. It's actually both.
Yes.
Right. So, Sam, does Salesforce1 support approval processes?
Yes, it does.
I'm not sure if this is the app or the platform, but...
Okay. Well, I said you're talking about the mobile app. It does support approval processes, and then if you, by chance, happen to be assigned to approve something, you will get both an in-app and push notification about it.
Right, and just a correction on that just comment that I made. That was Daniel Host, is the proper way to say his last name. Simple question, what app are you using to display the iPhone?
Xcode's iOS simulators. When you download Xcode, this is only available on the Mac right now, unfortunately. When you download Xcode, one of the additions you can also download is the iOS simulator.
Okay, here's kind of a long question, but it's an interesting one. You attached a file from your phone, but I'm assuming something on your PC has to wait until you get back to the office.
No, I guess I don't. It's immediately up in the cloud, so the attachment came from this phone's library, but I mean, even if you took a picture, it would immediately be uploaded into the chatter feed, and so once it's been uploaded, it's available anywhere.
Right, so everything that you do on the phone is recorded on the Force.com Salesforce Cloud.
Yep.
So that means something that you do on your phone, when you go to the desktop app, it's immediately available there, and so on. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, maybe you can clarify the question a little bit.
What is the consequence of using features that are in Pilot? And so Pilot is, I think, pretty much the last phase it goes through before it becomes generally available. But the fact is that while it's still not generally available, there are parts of it that can change. And features might change before they go fully released as generally available. And so I definitely encourage you to start using it if it's something that you want to use, just to get started in that development process, but take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, this is all around our safe harbor statement,
yep.
Right? And the reason why we expose it at all as a developer preview or pilot is so that we can get feedback and change it to be the feature that is as useful as possible. Okay, so final question. Is there a limit to the number of fields that can be tracked within the historical tracking?
You can do, it's up to 5 dates, but I don't know if the date field was explicit or the number of fields was explicit.
So there are some limits. I mean, you can track up to 5 objects, I think you said?
Up to 5 dates, and up to 3 custom objects in addition to cases and opportunities.
Right, and within those, I believe there's probably some types of fields that don't lend themselves to historical tracking, right? So date fields probably don't lend themselves to that. So something that we'll have to button down a better answer for you, and we'll post that on the release page. And that concludes the webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day.